Dude.
I'll be right there, man. Hold on.
Oh, sure. You'll be right there.
Recording starts and he splits.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Of course, that's how we do it. Don't worry. That's the only thing that we edit.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, man. I need some Eddie Van Halen, dude.
Okay, hold on. Let me see.
Needs to be louder.
Okay, don't worry. Just pretend that I played something really cool, and then I'll dub it in later.
We'll dub it. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, okay, Eddie.
Okay, ready?
Wow, this is great. I've never heard a guitar solo like this in my life.
Banging.
Wow.
Man, the CGI is going to be off the hook.
Way to go, Eddie. Yes. Excellent. You know.
Yeah. Rock and roll, baby.
Yeah.
Best thing you've played ever.
Wow. I'm really creating the illusion with that.
I really appreciate that it was live too. I mean, that you just don't get that
Yeah.
in every podcast. Yeah.
Normally we start all of our coffee talks with some kind of guitar solo, maybe some bad singing every once in a while too. It's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
But I think the group here doesn't have any shame. So
Yeah, I've caught a few episodes, and I mean that was definitely one of the better guitar solos to enter. Yeah,
It was awesome.
absolutely.
By the way, screw you, and screw you.
Okay.
Thanks
That's all I gotta say about that.
Thanks a lot for that, Leonard. I'm feeling the love, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes.
Well, I say that with love. But Robbie, we start off like this because we try to start on a low note, and everything thereafter is just going to be uphill, and wonderful. It's going to be killer.
Uphill battle. Yeah.
Lower the bar, lower expectations, and then it's all gravy after that. So welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to IoT Coffee Talk. This week, we have the Teal CEO, Robbie Hamlet, with us. Hello, Robbie.
Awesome.
Hi, guys. Nice to meet you. Rob, you and I know each other. Leonard, you look awfully familiar. David, I definitely don't know you. Stephanie, you also look kind of familiar. So
maybe y'all should introduce each other.
Nice to be on
yourselves.
Oh, God. So I'm David.
Do we really need to do that?
And I just insert jokes.
Robbie needs to meet you guys.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm the guy that introduces jokes when there's awkward silence and says all of and throws out dirty laundry from to whoever wants to hear it.
Yeah, his nickname is the IoT smartass.
So David works for Verizon, and he's given us the big red love there.
Yes, all day.
Yeah.
Are you in the IoT group with Verizon?
Yes, but don't hold that against me.
Okay. Yeah. So the Thing Center, or what's it called? Thing Space or something?
Thing Space, yes.
Yeah.
And it is the center of all things.
I appreciate it's one of the only IoT platforms with a true dark mode, except I think it's persistent everywhere. So
yeah.
You gotta love dark mode.
You mean, what do you mean from a security standpoint?
It's
or
like
are you talking about like the screen
like the
is
web
black
portal.
for the UI?
The screen is black for the UI. Like
okay.
Blacked out. Not like the Twitter, like grayscale dark mode. It's like actually black.
Okay.
It goes really well when you have a hoodie over and you're,
that's what I was about to say.
Yeah, it's just great.
So when you're trying to figure out why your IMEI was blacklisted in the middle of the night, you're not getting the like screen burn-in that you would normally get on the eyes.
It's easy on the eyes to troubleshoot. I appreciate that you like it.
Yeah. At night.
And from Bandera, Texas, we have Stephanie.
Hello.
Hi, Stephanie. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm sorry, I'm in an RV right now. We're traveling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yep. She's on a satellite.
What are you using for connectivity?
Good old public network.
What am I using for creativity or internet?
Internet connectivity. Yeah.
Using phone as a modem.
Oh.
For creativity, We just go to the garden
geez.
and come right back into the RV. And for connectivity, we use the public network.
But our neighbors tried out that Starlink system for the first time, and there's zero customer service or no customer support for that company at all. You can't call them.
Really? You
can't text them. You can't email them. And they sent them a router that doesn't power on, so we couldn't get it working.
Wonderful.
That's no way.
Wait a minute. Did you expect the router to do what it was supposed to do? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's supposed to be autonomous.
Exactly.
Autopilot.
Self-provisioning at its finest.
Well, you know what?
Yeah, it's supposed to be plug and play, but we went through like just kind of going through loops with their customer service. And all it is an FAQ with questions and answers and no way to contact anyone.
Yeah.
Okay. So in other words,
turn it off and turn it back on again.
Yeah, exactly. Plug and play around with it for a long time until you get really frustrated, and then you throw it away.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds about right.
Excellent. Well,
Nice.
your ranch is in Bandera. It's only, I don't know how many hours to drive all the way to the bottom of South Texas. You could go find Elon at Starbase, Texas, and just give him holy hell right there.
Right? We should.
Yeah.
Remember towards the end of Office Space when the guys grabbed the printer and the computer and just get at it? You need to do that. Right in front of the factory.
Yeah.
And,
oh my God, that would go viral, dude.
Right away. Yes.
Exactly. Okay.
I did promise that I was going to write a review and post it on LinkedIn and a couple other places on his behalf, just to show, hey, Elon, like, this is what you got going on right now. Thank you. It's not working.
Just have Leonard text them. It'd be much quicker. Like, hey, Elon, come on, man.
Have any of the nearby mobile operators in your vicinity come out with like fixed wireless access that could reach your ranch?
No. I mean, yeah, they can, but like at the RV park, if you're using their Wi-Fi, you're just opened up, you're kind of, I mean, to me, it's a security risk. So I would, the friend was like, okay, I'm going to try this new service out. It's like $600 for the hardware. And because I always tell him, don't get on the public Wi-Fi. That's not safe. So that's
RV parks are a great use case for private LTE, just because of how you can, carve up the spectrum, and that'd be really good.
You know what? Really I am going to pitch that on Friday. I'm going to change my name to RV Private LTE Dominican Guy. And I think that's what I'm going to go do. And
you guys got to use those PAL licenses for CBRS adjacent. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Now I just need work to buy me a nice rig from Outdoor Vans in Portland, Oregon. They're only like $250,000. Nice Sprinter 2500, lift it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Sell your house and live on the road, man.
Yes. I can't say that out loud. My wife's, it's within an earshot. So
you would freak out.
Calm down. Yeah.
That's what I think all of Rob Tiffany's projects used to be. Like, he would just get, funding to go do something that he really wanted to do, like, live out in the field and drink beer and wine. And he's helping the ag tech. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ag tech's a big thing now. Now everyone's talking about it. It's crazy.
Are you hearing a lot about it, Leonard? Really?
It is like all of a sudden the IoT use case that's going to save IoT. Yeah.
I've definitely noticed an uptick.
It's pretty amazing, man.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Well, I was there before it was cool. Okay.
I know.
So whatever.
That's like the weird thing. It's really
Rob, you're like, I'm just ready to make money with it. Come on, let's do this.
Did you say make money with it? It's a great.
How do I monetize this? No, not how you monetize this for the customer, but how do I monetize?
Oh my
God. Yeah. That's
what. You are like negative advertising for whatever operator you're moving right now, aren't you, Stephanie?
I'm booming.
You guys are like moving, right? You're not stationary.
I am moving. I'm on the road. We're going through all these little small towns south of Bandera.
Oh, well, it's summertime. It's time for vacations and going around the country. I totally get it.
HSPA Plus is alive and well on T-Mobile's network for the next couple months. So,
boom. Yeah. Absolutely. So, Leonard, you've been to a bunch of events, 3-4 weeks back to back? IoT, cellular.
Virtual. Yeah. And so, Robbie, hey, it's nice to meet you, man. Rob's been talking about Teal for quite a bit. I know that you guys had like this great collaboration back, and you continue to collaborate with Rob on, ironically, this whole agricultural thing. But yes, I have been attending a lot of virtual as well as real life events over the last couple of weeks. And it's good to be on the road, like Stephanie.
Yeah.
Except with better connectivity, which, you know what, man, it is a real problem, especially now. I think as we've gotten used to doing a lot of this, media stuff or online stuff. We take that on the road with us, and the network is not quite there, or it isn't there to support like our new habits, on the road. So I think it's a great opportunity. I like some of your ideas that you've already sprinkled into the conversation already, Robbie. But hey, it's great to meet you, and I'm looking forward to having this chat with you and finding out some of the stuff that you guys are doing at Teal.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. Thank you once again. Thanks for having me. It's awesome.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and oh, by the way, thank you for your donation. I want to make this really, noted to our audience is that Teal has donated to Elevate Our Kids, our nonprofit, and the mission of Elevate Our Kids is really to help bridge the digital divide. And so, thank you so much for that, Robbie, and the folks at Teal.
Of course.
Thank you.
So, Robbie, what in the heck is Teal all about, man? I feel like it's that moment to start pimping,
Well, yeah. I mean,
let's do
it. I don't know if I can quite do an elevator pitch. I did that elevator pitch.
I watched it.
It was awful. Like trying to boil down IoT concepts and what you're doing to differentiate in the space in literally 38 seconds. I definitely do not do well when it's like a heavily scripted interview. So I really appreciate this kind of format.
Smith Tower.
Teal connects anything to the internet that isn't like a phone or a personal computing device. And what we're doing that's kind of novel is that we're not an MNO, we're not an MVNO, we're a credentialing system. So for those familiar, we use eSIM technology. We're the only company in North America that has our own SMSR, SMDP. Those are the two servers that credential an IoT device. And what we're trying to do is make it so that if you build a device, you don't have to have multiple SKUs. You don't have to rely on truck rolls in order to update the identity of the device. Just kind of democratizing access to as many carriers as possible through one cloud-driven platform. There's a lot of multi-IMSI solutions, which is like a SIM card that bounces between two network or more identities. It's all static, and it's the business logic's kind of built at manufacture. There's plenty of like fake eSIM where they're really just roaming in hundreds of markets. We really wanted to take the eSIM technology, get the SIM technology providers like the Gemaltos, the Idemias, G&D, those kind of folks, get them out of the middle of it because they were charging like $7 per operation, and really move towards something that solution providers, people that are building IoT devices can offer and access more networks than they could before. So get people off roaming networks. That's the big push.
Yeah, roaming, the business case killer since 1972.
Yeah, carriers love it and hate it depending on which group they're in. I mean, they love ripping people off for $20 a gigabyte, but they also hate that it's not revenue attribution for Wall Street for IoT. So
right.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know about that whole deal you're talking about with roaming and the negatives of it, or or what can happen to you. I think a lot of people sign up with their mobile operator and they get a plan and it says you can roam and they think it's just magic.
I mean, you have David on the horn here, so we should probably pinch Verizon a little bit. I mean, Verizon's pretty much like the Sith Lord of roaming contracts. They kick so many people off roaming deals. They're like, wait, we only gave you express permission to put your Pixel 5s on the network, and you're using Pixel 5As. So we're gonna, terminate your whole roaming relationship, which hurts a lot of MVNOs. Happy to say Teal isn't operating that kind of strategy, but yeah, it's funny, Carrie. When you use a roaming network, you're really relying on the relationship between two operators.
I turn on the light. I'm going to do a little cape, and I have a lightsaber. And let me just do the Star Wars thing.
It's very topical. No Kenobi spoilers. I know you guys all got up really early to watch it. So
yeah,
but it's to defend some of the roaming things, and I'll go like international roaming, obviously. A lot of it is we're just, telcos are tied to existing legacy monolithic roaming agreements. And some of those roaming agreements are based on nationalistic monopoly laws. There's some countries where, it's written and it makes you wonder, man, like, who was the lobbyist who wrote this law and gave it to this guy to pass it? Because this is very telco specific. No device shall roam for more than 61 days. And after 61 days, you either get kicked out of the network and, we'll red flag, the device ID or whatever, or you can convert and localize using my own rate. And so, internationally, it is what it is. And Robbie, I always speak, work doesn't sponsor me to come and hang out with these, fine people. So all comments are my own. But
you're going to get fired, dude.
Oh, tomorrow, like as we end, like the pink slip just shows up. And I'm like, how do you spell severance? But the thing is, like, I know really good folks who are just maybe overprotective of the network. And to your point, it's like, hey, I've got this device with this hardware version and it's approved, and the OEM did an upgrade to the same device so that it runs better. Why is that not approved? And sometimes it's just a matter like, we want to make sure that no harm is going to come to the network so that we don't degrade the potentially hundreds or thousands of end users over one device that's giving me 17 cents a quarter.
Yeah, I mean, Verizon definitely, hundreds of users, really good network. It's
hundreds. I almost spit
hundreds.
My coffee here.
We have
118 million. Not that anyone's counting.
Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely two different things. There's like protection of the network when it comes to permitted use cases and certification processes, which have come a really long way. And Teal is not a replacement for the Verizon certification process. Teal is a way to enroll in Verizon networks, and you still have to go through that same kind of certification. You still have to be using permitted devices, but we're going to credential the user with a Verizon IMSI, which is totally different from the deployment models of an MVNO, where you're going to use like an international IMSI. You're going to connect domestically in the US, and then you're going to hope and pray that Verizon and KPN keep things together, when we all know that they will eventually run into some sort of issue. That's an actual example right there. But yeah.
No point.
No further comment. But Robbie, so a question. Now I'm just looking at my second screen. Is there a difference? I'm asking out of ignorance. Verizon has a product that's called IoT Security Credentialing, which does that. Credential at the device level. Is it? I don't know. Are you? So do we compete there, or
is that like an IoT safe? When we talk about credentialing as a service, we talk about like the network identity. So specifically like the IMSI or the SUCHI in the future, SUPI. But the identity or the credential as a service, that could be like an IoT safe implementation. Is that what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I'm like looking for the right stuff here, because I haven't looked at this in a bit. I'll come back to that. It's one of those.
We definitely don't compete with Verizon, right? Like Verizon does not offer an eSIM that they can embed an eSIM, but it's going to use Verizon and Verizon's networks only, right? Like it's only going to use Verizon's roaming partners and those that have done like an IMSI integration with Verizon. The Teal is building like a Switzerland, so in the US, you can switch between a Verizon IMSI, an AT&T IMSI, and a T-Mobile IMSI.
Okay.
Which is like a lot different than an MVNO. Like I'm not really going to call out a whole bunch of names here, but you guys can ask and I'll nod my head because I don't want to throw too much dirt on competitors. But they're using like a KPN IMSI, they're connecting in the US, and they're roaming. So they're accessing the radio networks, but the data cores are completely different. And the identity isn't dynamic. So that's the functionality that Teal's bringing, is that you wouldn't want to be roaming long term. Creates a lot of access problems. Eventually, data legislation gets written that says we need to protect this environment, like you were talking about. Like Anatel in Brazil is one. That's also led to a lot of carriers creating eSIM solutions that aren't like, when people think of eSIM, they think about like, oh, I can just move my phone across carriers. I can digitally program my eSIM now to do whatever I want, but actually it depends on who issues it. And, an eSIM provided by, say T-Mobile is only ever going to do T-Mobile in the US. You're never going to be able to install AT&T or Verizon onto it. And you're going to have to wait for them to integrate that Brazilian carrier. But the need for like a Brazilian local IMSI, a Singapore local IMSI, a Turkish local IMSI, all these different markets where roaming has been outlawed in some way, even for the best of carrier relationships, that's created a lot of these tangential eSIM solutions. So, yeah, I mean, you guys have me down the eSIM train, which is going to take up the full hour, fine. But yeah.
We want to teach the people.
It's super interesting. It's super interesting because I think there's a lot of new business models and companies. They're not necessarily new, like a lot of the CPaaS companies, they're doing a lot of what I think you guys are doing more on the, application level, but everyone, there's this game where you're trying to create these global connectivity capabilities off of these federated models, right? You're trying to provide a brokerage service. And like you said, you're trying to establish this Switzerland of connectivity, right, at the credentialing level. But then there's others that are, that are now trying to do that at different levels and maybe taking on a heavier load of the stack to try to make these types of solutions, these global solutions happen. But I mean, man. What we're talking about here, I don't think a lot of people even know about any of this stuff, and we've actually had like 3 or 4 conversations about this where it's like, wow, this is some really innovative stuff, but there's also what's one of our top themes in IoT Coffee Talk? Friggin' dirty laundry. And those are
I already threw out a bunch.
But you're in the right place.
Because those are the big hurdles to overcome, and where the focus of innovative thinking needs to go. I don't know. I mean, would you agree with that, Robbie? Because you guys are doing some like pretty crazy
stuff. There's always like a hidden truth in a lot of services. Where it's like, who is this really benefiting to do it in this way? Like this architecture that was written, they can talk about programmatic access. People can talk about like automatic network switching, but it's like, what at the end of the day are they really tying it out to? Are they tying it out to like, we're gonna just arbitrage our roaming rate card? Because that can happen very easily. You can say, we're gonna cover the whole world. Look at this ubiquitous global connectivity, but you're designing a system that is dependent on your relationships with those operators maintaining over time and keeping those commercials. And operators change their minds as they roll out new features. Like one of the things that will eventually start to happen is 5G compute packages, and we're not really sure who's going to pay for that. Is that going to be included with the transport, or is that going to be a value-added service? But there's revenue there for operators that they won't be able to access through roaming connections. Then you start to think, okay, it's going to become more and more important to natively enroll these devices in these networks. Are they going to take a even harsher view of roaming relationships long term? There's just a lot of shortcuts people take to try to build something that they say is global. Yes, it is global, but is it really doing things the right way? Like what is the key differentiator? What is the functional difference for the solution provider? Is it that they're now in more control, or are they just getting more access with less control? And there's different ways of doing that.
Well, it reminds me a lot about a topic that comes up a lot on IoT Coffee Talk, which is the whole global supply chain visibility. And everyone's talking about, oh, we have a solution for this, that. And I was like, okay, I've heard this for a long time. But there are angles to make that kind of stuff happen. It's a long path. It's not going to happen overnight. But, I think the companies that are able to do the kind of learning that you guys are doing are going to be really instrumental in the future, because, at some point, the economics are going to shift where a lot of what you guys are doing makes just a hell of a lot of sense. But in the interim, it has to be a lot of effort. And, I think getting that mindset shift to the customers that you're talking about or looking to acquire, but now also engaging these operators who have the networks that and the coverage that you guys are trying to help them actually monetize and optimize better. But look at NB-IoT. NB-IoT has really struggled to deploy because there's no roaming relationships, and that's the shortcut that everybody took to get onto CAT-M networks. And so NB-IoT is a great technology. It's very interesting. There's certainly power savings compared to CAT-M for an always connected device and things in supply chain like you're talking about, but it's incredibly difficult to work with, right? Like even global connectivity MVNOs, they have to give you multiple SIM cards to access that kind of network. So they're giving you a China mobile SIM card, and that's going to do NB-IoT in China. And then if you want to go to America, you have to use like a different MVNO SIM card for an NB-IoT network from Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T. And there's no swapping of the same identity. Like those are identities. When you get a new SIM card, it's a new identity. And that's what Teal's trying to do, is make it so that you don't have to do a different SIM card in multiple networks. You don't have to use roaming, which is kind of the shortcut everybody takes to do LTE, and even some 5G roaming now exists.
What you're saying is that the reason there aren't 50 billion devices sold every 2 seconds is because of us and roaming. It's
you don't work for Verizon.
us telcos. It's so cool.
You saved your job.
It's so cool to hear, your perspective. And look, I'll make a comment and turn it into a question. If I'm, let's go to consumer device for a second, and then, I'll ask it in IoT way. If I buy a consumer device that has a feature that I would pay extra for based on the network that I'm on, whatever that is, I think on the consumer side, we all know that when I travel, therefore roam, whatever that service thing is, I don't know that the consumer is thinking that is going to work across borders. No one does. So with that said, on an IoT perspective, the NB-IoT aside, just traditional roaming, the experience on IoT devices is about the same when you're roaming in other similarly built networks outside of the originating country. So the biggest thing is truly how the rates are a shot in the dark. That's why, we've had conversations here where we all agree that to get the best rate, you make a deal with the local carrier. But what you don't want to do is to have, what if you have a device that travels between, Portugal and Malta? I mean, what are you going to do? Are you really going to have relationships with all these carriers and have the users? Remember the CD-ROM things that we had in our cars? Am I going to have one of those? I've seen that, like for SIM cards. That's insane, right?
I'm definitely going to copy that example. It's like using CD cards or cassette decks. Yeah. Definitely going to use that.
And then you drive with your knee while you're,
we do that a lot.
Iggy Pop CD or whatever. All this to say that, that from across carriers, the messaging of global is it works, but it just, it works differently.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really, help, us, you guys, IoT developers.
Yeah. Real key reason why you would want to switch identities and be, a US user in US and a Mexican user in Mexico. Real key, there's not so many value-added services on top, like you're talking in consumer land, like you might get a free Netflix subscription, or you might be able to do some game streaming, starting to see that more and more. But you're not really expecting those features to transfer across roaming. Pricing matters a lot, right? And you guys have seen probably, or might have, if you've talked to somebody offering IoT connectivity in the last 20 years, there's a lot of like zone breakdowns of things. So it's like zone A is going to have these 8 countries and it's going to be $20 a gigabyte. Zone B is going to have these and it's $75 a gigabyte. And it just, is a long list. It's just, what tiers of roaming relationships does that carrier have based on traffic allocations? A lot of times IoT data rates are based on the consumer visitations. So like how many credits are they exchanging when a user goes to the Maldives between them and the business carrier in the Maldives? I think it's Ooredoo in the Maldives. That's an interesting case. There's one operator there, just one. And they make bank. So
they have a captive audience.
There's the features, there's the pricing, then there's also performance. And like if you've visited Mexico with a US line, and I visited with my Verizon line, text messages don't get delivered in the right order. They come in minutes or hours later.
That's a feature.
The throughput. This is not related to Verizon. This is related to everybody. I love the folks at Verizon. We have a good relationship with you guys. It's just your roaming. So your HSS is still in the US. So your authentication is going to be slower. Your data access, there's likely not local breakouts depending on how the carrier is routing that APN. A native device, especially in IoT, where true 5G use cases are doing LiDAR, they're doing real-time compute, they're doing all these things, computer vision specifically. They're doing these things that require a lot of data. And you definitely don't want to be like sending the data back to Belgium or literal Switzerland. You'd much rather have all the data terminate locally and get a better price for it at the same time.
Is that a key difference with Teal? With some of these other, either your roaming or MVNO, your data is going bizarre locations just to get somewhere from this?
Definitely. I can throw a rock at these guys because they're a public company, but like Core, they're an IoT reseller. They are doing a lot of roaming. They have some local agreements too, but in those MVNO models, they're saying, look, we're going to solve the access problem. We're going to give you these carriers and you're going to use our arbitrage relationships, be they roaming or even some direct. It's definitely not a programmable platform, right? Like they have an eSIM, but there's some cards that work on it, some that don't. I definitely know the carrier struggle more than most. And that's, why Teal's kind of on the bleeding edge of this stuff. But they're giving you like their data centers. So they're using Core's packet gateways in the US. And if you're using something like Teal, we're enrolling you natively into those networks. So you're using Verizon's data centers, the same one when David offers an IoT SIM card to somebody with a Verizon identity. We're using that same identity, that same data tunnel. And then you can switch it and you can use Verizon's data or AT&T's data tunnels or T-Mobile's data tunnels. It's taking the roaming out of the equation, and then also taking all of these like arbitraged data centers and MVNO type models out of the equation too.
So it's like a lot of bizarre data pathways that are excessive or unnecessary. It seems.
Yeah, like you could get like 300 packet gateways in the United States with an MNO's IoT data network, anywhere from 20 to 300, depending on which broadcast peelman you're using. You could get that, or you could get like one or two, because a lot of times these MVNOs, when they roam, they might create one data center in Singapore and say, look, the data is going to terminate in Singapore. But is that really going to scale compared to the billions of dollars that the MNO there has invested in building out a much larger infrastructure? We think there's a lot of value in IoT companies connecting into that infrastructure rather than kind of riding along parallel to it and trying to replicate what they have.
Robbie, so on that note, do you see a linkage in maybe using a hyperscaler to handle some of that traffic? Because, so public stuff, right? Look at the stuff that the AWS wavelength 5G project, right? So Verizon, KDDI, I think SK Telecom, Vodafone, at least in the UK. So, and there's infrastructure that's there. So is that something, I don't know, is that something that you could leverage to the advantage of better performance? Because now we have a localized instance of the same data center, or it doesn't really apply to your MNO?
Possibly. Doing things in the cloud certainly does add more latency than doing it at the edge. It also adds a lot more costs. AWS would love to have their egress fee applied for all data connections in and out of the internet, and that's why even though we're an AWS technology partner and they have a great application stack and compute stack, it's why we're not doing any kind of radius or gateway type appliances in AWS. It's because like a bare metal install where you're paying, a few $100 a month for gig internet or 10 gig or whatever, just makes way more sense than paying 16 cents a megabyte or something, or 16 cents a gigabyte. But mobile core in the cloud is a very promising concept, especially for private network operators. And that's another thing that, Teal, very nerdy to get into, but Teal enables a lot of hybrid solutions between a public network and a private network. So there's lots of enterprises now that are wanting to do their own RF. They're wanting to build out their own, warehouse or ag tech deployment. And they don't want to be paying the public MNOs for that connectivity. They want to be running and operating or paying somebody else to operate this private network. Teal has a solution to switch the devices between that private identity and that public identity. So you can use the public network when you leave the covered area, and you can offset your transport costs and own your network by accessing the private network in a private area.
Yeah, but everybody else is doing that. Every MNO that's deploying, user A, meaning on premises only, but user B everywhere else. So what is it? Just like, what is it that you would do differently?
We're focused on just the identity, so people aren't locked into using an MNO-driven solution, right? Like you could literally run a mobile core on a Raspberry Pi with the Magma project, and you could build, whatever network you want on band 48, the CBRS spectrum, use unlicensed band space, and then shoot it out there. I mean, the operators do see a lot of potential in private networks for like stadiums and campuses and congested use cases. There isn't yet like a service offering for an office building necessarily. That's something that like Solona, GenXCom, those kind of folks are building out.
Yeah, I do want to see in production mobile core on a Raspberry Pi, and
maybe a follow-up episode. It'd be fun. Yeah, that
would be fun.
The Facebook team has put a lot of work into Magma. It's one of the really under the radar projects. Is like, how can they open source mobile core? Because that's stuff that Ericsson, Nokia, all those kind of folks have been building for a very long time. And now we could
put a core on this.
You could put an HSS and a PCRF and everything. Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
I mean, it's going to it's not going to run very well, but like it can.
Right. But you can do it.
You still need some antennas there.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, you could run your HSS and your OCS and everything.
Maybe if we have a follow-up, it's for this Meta open core project, and maybe we can have a VCO. We can have Mavenir and Athernet, tell us what they think about that.
Yeah,
and then we can get in fun Open RAN conversations.
Yeah. Oh, Open RAN, the dream.
Yes.
We could say like, all right, everybody has 2 months. What is the weirdest thing you're going to run a cellular mobile core on? And then Teal can issue the QR codes to authenticate onto it. That's,
when I think of Mavenir, Leonard, your friend, Mr. Baker, I think I've seen some photos with you guys. I just remember being, on a panel discussion with him when I was at Ericsson. And all he did was just say horrible things to me the whole time, or close technologies like Ericsson. I mean, it was, like you're supposed to be on this nice collegial kind of thing talking about it. All he did was just bash me and Ericsson the whole time because we're not open, and I was like, somebody's got to make some money somewhere. I have a few questions. So back to Teal being in Switzerland. And I guess these MVNOs are also probably trying to promise they're Switzerland. They may or may not really be. Does Teal have to have agreements with every operator in order to credential them? So like when you, because like a person may not understand when you're programming an eSIM over the air to say, now you're part of Vodafone. Does Vodafone just say, yeah, sure, no problem, I've never heard of you, but you're good? Or do you have to have contracts in place?
They're integrations. And those integrations take a very long time to hook up operators, right? Like we're very much in the middle of things with Verizon right now. So it's not a profile that's readily available to our customers yet on our portal. But it's a lot of work. My background was doing these types of integrations, working on General Motors and Daimler and these different projects. And you get an eSIM platform, then you get the carriers to agree to integrate into it. And then you're stuck, paying essentially two vendors. You're paying the operator for their side, and you're paying the eSIM platform for their side. And then what you've created is something that works only for your solution, for your one opportunity. The carriers really, that's why eSIM's been around for 10 years, but there hasn't been like this way to switch between the mobile cores yet. The carriers just kind of to protect their network, to protect how they were going to do things, protect revenue. They were saying, look, there's eSIM enabled use cases, and then there's like the business cases that will just give you a SIM card to do. And it's been very difficult to align the two, because somebody like a General Motors can say, look, the project requirement demands eSIM. Can you give us a connectivity rate to your network that works with eSIM functionality? And the carrier gets a lot of visibility into the rules of that eSIM solution. So a lot of Teal is a lot of the value prop for Teal to operators is that we've established a base set of rules that everybody wants to follow. And we address concerns about margin erosion and things like that. But getting back sort of to the question, it is very difficult to scale there's 800 LTE networks out there. It would be impossible for an MVNO to onboard 800 networks into a platform that they themselves don't run, right? Like an MVNO is using a middleman like an IDEMIA or a G&D or a Gemalto, and they're paying them an arm and a leg every time they integrate somebody. With us, we're doing this kind of one-to-many type integration. We're providing developer-style documentation to operators so that we can get up and running very quickly because we've built a new type of platform. Because we actually run and manage our own source code, there isn't like a long project for somebody like Verizon to integrate, a Talus solution that Teal has built into their network. It's something that we're very flexible and agile on. So there's a lot of work. And you can either, as a solution provider, kind of go at it alone in that GM style model where you buy a platform, then you get to decide what carriers are involved. Or you take it from an MVNO where the MVNO has already decided, what rates are they going to arbitrage. Or you can use something like Teal, where if we don't have a network already onboarded for you, you can bring your own network into the equation. And that's something that really changes things. So yes, we have economics already with operators where they've agreed to do eSIM on those kind of models. But with Teal, if you have an operator that hasn't yet integrated with Teal, and you're a solution provider, you can bring that operator in, keep the commercials between yourself and that operator, and Teal will onboard that operator simply because there's a value in using that business case to then bring that eSIM profile to everybody.
Did we just create like maybe a new acronym, bring your own operator?
Bring your own operator. So every time, and there's a lot of nuance to that. Everybody then, with 500 lines with their Verizon IoT group, everybody, and I'm going to keep using Verizon because there's a Verizon guy here, so he can just kind of like nod and shake his head if I'm going too far. But everybody that has their own deal with a carrier direct, then they automatically think they can bring that economic into Teal. And just because you have 500 lines with Verizon doesn't mean that you're driving economics necessarily even in your favor at that point. But it's certainly true that they gave you that rate without eSIM, without the ability to say, this line maybe is going to live in our network forever, versus it can't leave with a Verizon issued SIM card.
Okay. Yeah, I just remember when I was on the LT for the IoT accelerator at Ericsson, one of the things, was, there's a lot of technology involved. Obviously, we kind of had a model that was like Jasper, where we were kind of providing, like Ericsson doesn't sell directly to enterprises. They work with carriers, and the carrier who doesn't already have something like Verizon has would be able to offer IoT accelerator to do that, to get people on IoT devices. And I think it was like 36 operators around the world. But what I remember, though, aside from the building breakouts and doing a whole lot of work, it was just contracts.
Yeah.
It was just, you had to have contracts with everybody. It was, in fact, if I take one thing away from all that, it was just a whole bunch of paperwork.
Yeah.
Is it safe to assume
a lot of paperwork?
And so for Teal to be able to connect dynamically to all these different operators around the planet, is it safe to assume Teal already had to have a contract in place with each one of them?
Every like network identity that we integrate, Teal has to build some kind of statement of work and contract with that operator. So even though, we say we have 3,500 different network connections there is roaming still involved, right? Like we don't have 800 LTE networks and their exact identities integrated into the Teal platform yet. And we definitely have more IMSIs than any other platform in terms of the number of credentials that we're able to issue. But we still have to provide the pathway. You can still access KDDI on Teal's platform, even if we don't have KDDI native. However, as soon as you outgrow that roaming relationship, we're more than happy to integrate KDDI on your behalf rather than having to build a discrete solution or a bespoke solution, rather than having to get something from KDDI that doesn't have all of the other carriers that Teal has already integrated. It's just trying to reach that critical mass of like population that drives carriers and then carriers that drive the population. It's kind of a little bit of a catch-22 at times.
Right. No, that makes sense.
I know I handed Rob a big check when Rob came to us and said, hey, I've got this Ericsson native core in 2,000 countries and 16 galaxies. I could totally do this. And I'm like, sounds great. Yeah. And then Rob tells me it's an 80-20 split. I'm like, damn it, Rob.
So we don't have a mobile core. We're not building out a mobile core. We don't operate a virtual network. That's why it's a lot easier for carriers to offer their solution through Teal, because it's literally just how do we hammer out the ES3 or the profile donation type model. Teal can do the data gen, but because we own all the SIM technology bits in-house, we can do that in a phone call if we get the right people on the line. But it's developer style documentation as opposed to like, oh, you have to use our HSS. We have to, update everybody's IR21s. Like, there's just like a lot of paperwork involved in doing the MVNO style integration.
Wow. I think the Uber goal for us when I was at Ericsson doing IoT there was ultimately to drive adoption of cellular IoT. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the goal for a lot of folks, actually. When you look at the numbers of, all those IoT devices, and obviously Ericsson and GE and a lot of others were guilty a long time ago saying there's going to be 50 million or billion actually connected devices by
trillion, I think.
Yeah, by 2020. And obviously we weren't even close to that. But whatever the number of IoT connected devices are, cellular is in last place right now. And so the Uber goal for Ericsson, and I'm sure a lot of other people, was what is it going to take to move the needle to get people to adopt using cellular for their IoT endpoints versus, and I would always say stuff like, put yourself in the shoes of a developer. The developers are building these IoT solutions, and guess what? They're going to follow the path of least resistance. And so if you are inside a building, they are probably just going to try to piggyback on some network that's already there.
Yeah.
Because it's easy.
They should. I think IoT, I'm a IoT evangelist. I don't know what word, but like, you become an IoT centrist, let's say. I'm an IoT centrist. So cellular, you can make it work more like satellite by, just opening up more roaming agreements and doing better identity management. Teal's trying to make it more ubiquitous. You can make it more like Wi-Fi by deploying these private network indoor type solutions with cellular. But fundamentally, what cellular is to me is it's a security requirement to protect licensed spectrum. And for things that need to have more spectrum, the higher bandwidth use cases, you will have to use cellular. And is it about mobility and independent bearer connection to the internet? Yes, it's about that sort of stuff too. But, can you really trust the Starbucks Wi-Fi network with your IoT device? And does Starbucks Wi-Fi network even scale to support? I was just speaking at the 6 conference for Starbucks, and they're talking about putting sensors on like the squeeze bottles for the syrup, so they can tell how many times it was squeezed. Now, obviously, we're not strapping, not helium, different startup. We're not going to strap a particle board to it and say we're going to send that out over cellular.
Right.
It's got to be like LoRaWAN or something. But there's kind of a mesh of mesh networks. There's you can mesh all the networks together. Not a mesh network like LoRaWAN, but like you can mesh everything together, and every network type kind of has its place.
Yeah, like that whole agriculture thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was and I think this will come down to cost too.
Yeah,
the farmer's like, am I going to have is every single device deployed out all over the place going to have a SIM card in it? And
no, you probably shouldn't do that. Even though, like, obviously, Ericsson and the people that we're talking about, billions and trillions of IoT devices would love you to put a SIM card in as many things as possible. What actually needs an independent bearer to the internet, because it's a wide area network. It's not a local area network. When you have a cellular connection, you're connected to the internet. And what needs to use spectrum that is licensed. Because LoRaWAN, right? Like, you can just do messages per second, but as soon as you try to do like carbon, is it Carbon Robotics in Seattle? Have you guys seen that company?
Yeah.
They do the Zambonis with the lasers on them, and they roll them over. They take a lot of computer imaging in order to drive that thing autonomously. They obviously can't do that over LoRaWAN. They can't do that over Wi-Fi. They need some kind of cellular type solution, because they need to do gigabytes per second, ideally. So
right.
It's
is that the one using lasers to zap the weeds and stuff like that?
Yep. No more pesticides. I always shout them out because
yeah, it's good stuff. Didn't they go through the 5G Open Innovation Labs? I can't remember if they were one of them. Maybe not.
I think they did. I think I met them through Voyager, one of the VCs here. But super funny anecdote. They have their warehouse on Aurora in Seattle. Are you guys all in the Seattle area, David, Leonard?
I'm in San Fran, but I'm wearing my Oregon.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. So there's there's this rough street in Seattle, Aurora area, and they have a Home Depot shed where they're firing like the highest, the most dangerous laser you can buy without essentially being in the military. And this thing they use to like rip holes through books. Like, if you put a thick book in front of it, it would just shoot right through. It wouldn't be like instant. It would take a little bit, but super strong lasers. And they just have them test firing 24/7 in this kind of janky shed, and it's unsupervised. And it's super cool. I love startups for that reason, because you can get away with so much without your business insurance.
You're just like, oh, we didn't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know I would burn a hole through my friend.
We were just trying to test zapping weeds, and we used
they're invisible lasers too, so like it's very, very difficult to know if they're on or not, and so like,
or if they're reflecting,
or if they're reflecting off something. Yeah, they shoot them into a bucket of water, which like sizzles, and they have to refill the water over time because it vaporizes the water. And it's hilarious. Like, what if your calculations off and blow through the water? And yeah,
absolutely.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could go wrong? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I loved about Teal when I needed them, and I was an idiot using a SIM card in every single device, but luckily I wasn't using 10,000 devices, so I was okay.
Yeah.
But the onboarding was so easy. I mean, aside from all the stuff you've been talking about here that's important for people to know about roaming and not roaming local, just, sometimes ease of use, user interfaces, things like that means so much.
Just out of the box, every Teal chip or card, like it starts like any other kind of roaming relationship. Like it's going to roam, it's going to connect in hundreds of countries. It's going to connect on, hundreds of networks. And then the magic starts to happen where you can program it and you can play around. Not every device is going to work with eSIM, right? Like maybe 80% of them do. Sometimes there's an extra command you need. But yeah, it's very easy to just get going out of the box, just to take the card or the chip and play around a little bit. All the expert stuff of like, I'm going to load my own network credentials into this sort of thing. That's all kind of extra, but yeah.
I mean, I got my box, pulled out the SIMs, had nice, easy instructions, and an idiot like me was able to plug it in. We were using stuff from Nordic Semiconductor and everything, and it just worked. And our customers were blown away. We were sending telemetry the same day that we got the stuff and deployed them to the fields.
We want to make it really easy and fast to enroll into these networks.
Absolutely. But you're thinking maybe, in some cases it makes sense to use cellular for each endpoint, and sometimes maybe you use LoRaWAN and then put Teal on the gateways. It depends.
Backhaul. It's whatever needs that connection to the internet, right? If you can get by without 500 things, and for IoT to succeed, like there's always value in the data, but the transport cost can't exceed that value. And if you're doing, like I said, if you're putting a cellular radio on the squirt bottle for the syrups at Starbucks. Is it really worth dollars per month for
yes,
Starbucks?
Because it will keep the syrup warm at higher than room temperature. Okay, it will radiate it.
But it reminds me of a long time ago when RFID came out in the early days, in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
Walmart, which they are known for strong arming all the people who have sell things in their stores, and they get to dictate a lot to them because they're so blessed to get to be on their shelves. And I remember when they started strong arming all these companies saying, you're going to have to start putting an RFID tag on every bottle of shampoo or whatever. And the industry had to push back, and they're like, the economics don't work. And so it's like today, economics were going to be maybe one tag per pallet. But and so the idea of putting a cellular thing on each bottle of syrup, it reminds me of that, crazy money.
But I think it would be also fair to point out that and Robbie brought it up, the whole premise of private cellular goes away. That goes away. There is no per device fee,
right?
But you do have a SIM card on each device that's attached to that.
Yeah, there's no transport costs.
There's no transport.
You're running it like ideally, the models become so aggressive that it's like you buy a Wi-Fi router or you buy a private cellular router. And the spectrum licenses and the features that you enable, the industry is definitely going to F that up for the first 5 years. But eventually it would be very cool to see, potentially terabytes of capacity at people's fingertips rather than, what they can do with Wi-Fi today, which has no power control, has no network slicing. The whole repeater-based system is kind of broken for a lot of. And
I think a lot of people don't realize that when we talk about private networks, private cellular, whatever, that kind of thing. It's just like, we're trying to make it just like Wi-Fi. It's just like when you chose Wi-Fi and it's free. You bought this thing and then you do whatever you want to do.
The private LTE companies that have failed so far, they all tried to monetize it in a way that was like, not like when you're building out a building, it's price per square foot of Wi-Fi coverage. It has to meet or exceed that in order to have a chance. And you can't be, sometimes the private network operators trying to charge gigabyte rates because they're like, well, it's a cellular network and people are used to paying, per gig for cellular. We'll just make it, 25 cents a gigabyte or something. Messy. Way too messy.
Yeah.
You've triggered me with this per square footage thing, because at the end of the day, it takes someone who's gone through this to actually understand what that means. Because if we're talking about, private wireless or Wi-Fi, and we take in consideration all of the hardware, do I need spectrum or not, install, maintenance, like TCO, right?
Yeah.
Well, right now, the cost per square footage is lower on Wi-Fi. But the second that I go to Rob and Rob needs to solve something for a farm to get to the square footage he needs, Wi-Fi will kill him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And it also won't work. Yeah.
Well, the problem is,
I didn't say it was going to work. I was just saying that it's more expensive.
Right.
And it won't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about pricing for differentiation, not for being a substitute. And that's where I think the whole Wi-Fi cellular for private networks, where Wi-Fi wins. And that's the big challenge for a lot of the cellular folks that are trying to sell the cellular value proposition, where they oftentimes fall short. And I think to say that you want to make it as easy as Wi-Fi is misguided, quite honestly, because there's things that Wi-Fi is never going to be able to do, or it isn't going to be able to do. Why not, try to look at how, like 5G or, cellular in general complements what you're trying to do, because a lot of the new use cases, the stuff that's really interesting, especially on the reliability and latency front, it plays in the favor of cellular for the most part. But, there hasn't been, when I listen to a lot of companies and some of my clients talk about private networks, they're just so fixated on the network. It's just like, okay, well, why is anyone going to buy this stuff? And
it's kind of chicken and the egg, though. Like the use case, sometimes private LTE is it's in search of a use case, right? Because you can use it on a campus, you can use it in a warehouse, but are there yet enough robots in that warehouse to exceed the capacity of Wi-Fi? Not yet. Right? Like they're kind of getting by, but they also can't do that until they have a network that can support all that capacity. Yeah. And if you just make it like those kind of things, like those focused business models, you don't necessarily have to focus. I think just driving the costs down in general, like you can say, like you can do the same kind of deployment as Wi-Fi. We're going to make it as easy as possible because we're going to use Teal to give everybody QR codes to access that network. You don't have to worry about whether you already have those 2,000 robots and flying drones and everything inside your warehouse to make the purchase and switch over to cellular. Because it's got to. But I totally get the easiest Wi-Fi thing in that you're competing with familiarity. Everybody's got Wi-Fi router and access points at their house, and they know how to use them. And you have to. That's something everyone just understands. They go, "Oh yeah, I get that." Yeah. Wait until we all find out that the Amazon Echoes, that those all have private LTE networks built into them too. And they just get flipped on. And there you go. Boom. Awesome. Network. Cool. Yeah. Oh, we're out of coffee, aren't we?
And with that echo.
Yes.
Coffee.
Yes. Well, Robbie, thanks so much for being on here. I think we went really, really deep on eSIM and global stuff. And gosh. Awesome. And a lot of acronyms that no one's ever heard of. You got to guide me back, because then I get to the end of these things and they're like, dude, you used that acronym? It's like, nobody's going to know. We switched to this DMZ, and then the guys got us out in a helicopter, and then we had to roam in Mexico and stuff like that. And then there's this HSS that attacked us. When I do investor pitches, sometimes my buddy will have like a stopwatch or like a strike and ball counter on how many acronyms, because like, you can talk past people so fast with those. I mean, I'm not using any complicated things. You guys all get it. And I'm sure your listeners do too. But plenty of people on the business side do not know HSSs or care. Just don't underappreciate or underestimate what people can learn. Let's put it that way. Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. So thank you so much. This is a really great session.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great chat.
Thanks for having us.
Rest of your Wednesdays. Yeah,
absolutely. So thanks everybody coming to IoT Coffee Talk with our special guest, Robbie Hamlet, CEO of Teal. If you're looking to get your IoT devices connected with cellular, maybe go take a look at Teal and see if it makes sense for you guys. Come check us out at IoTCoffeeTalk.com, and we're your favorite YouTubers. And hit that bell, like us, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're just pseudo TikTokers actually, but whatever.
We're trying to get to a gajillion followers.
We need a gajillion followers to help us. Exactly. So that Leonard can get maybe a penny a day or something from.
David needs more dance videos in order to get your followers. Yeah.
We that's what it really takes. You have to do the TikTok dances to make it. Yeah.
Gotta sell out.
Idea. I have to do that next week.
Absolutely. All right. See you later, everybody.
All right.
Cheers.
See you guys.
Adios.